Shalom and welcome to Jerusalem Studio. U.S. President Donald Trump seems to be approaching the growing danger of Iran's acquisition of nuclear weapons from two opposite angels simultaneously. In private messages and public statements, he is both courting and threatening Tehran. The pledge to do whatever is necessary to preempt the Iranians from dashing towards the finish line is repeated, broadly hinting at his authorization of American or Israeli strikes, while at the same time enlisting Russia, supposedly, as a go-between in an apparent attempt to deflect Supreme Leader Khomeini's brinkmanship. How close are Washington and Jerusalem to reaching the conclusion that diplomacy has run its course and the time to resort to kinetic action has arrived? To help us through this maze, we are joined by a panel of analysts, experts, to include Brigadier General in Reserve Yossi Kuperwasser, who formerly served as the director of the Israeli Ministry of Strategic Affairs, the head of the Research and Assessment Division at the IDF Intelligence Directorate, and currently the president of the Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and Security. It's great to see you, General.
Great to be with you.
Also joining us from Madrid, Spain, is Dr. Rafael Barraji, who formerly served as Spain's National Security Advisor and currently is the CEO of Worldwide Strategy. It's great to have you with us also, Rafael.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And last but certainly not least, Dr. Olli Heinonen, who is formerly a Deputy Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency and currently a Distinguished Fellow at the Stimson Center at Washington, D.C. It's very good to have you with us again, Olli.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, if I may start with you, Dr. Heinonen, I would like to begin by asking you to give us 2 cents on the current state of play of Iran's nuclear infrastructure. To what degree has it progressed? There was, of course, the meeting of the Board of Governors, during the course of which alarm has been raised and censors have been stated.
Thank you. Yes, several member states of the IAEA and individuals are worried about the developments associated with the Iranian nuclear program. First of all, they are focusing to this fairly high enriched uranium, 60% enriched uranium, which doesn't have really a plausible use in the current declared nuclear program of Iran. And this kind of material can be in a few days turned up to weapons-grade uranium. Stocks are high. It's 275 kilograms in the latest IAEA report. And when you look the data last 2 years, actually when you analyze it, what Iran has been doing, it has been focusing actually to produce the high-enriched uranium and not those lower enrichments like 3 to 5%, which is more suitable for its declared nuclear program. So that's one concern. The second concern is the language by some of the officers of Iran who started to speculate whether if there is a push, they will perhaps leave the NPT, which is a right of any state which is a member of the NPT. But hearing things like that we have all these capabilities, if we want to do it, we can do it very swiftly, as Mr. Salehi said more than a year ago. And this reminds me actually from a statement from 1988. South African foreign minister was in Vienna, and people were asking them that, what is the status of your nuclear program? Are you developing a nuclear weapon? His answer was very unusual. Now we know that they already had it. Said, we have a capability to manufacture a nuclear weapon. Very similar to the statement of Salehi. And then the third major point is certainly that Iran doesn't engage with IAEA in substantial discussion on these discrepancies which is in their declarations. And this has now gone for 2 years, since March 23. So those 3 things are worrisome. And as a result of that, also UN Security Council is going to have this week a closed-door meeting where they will address the growing tension between Iran and other states. And then all this is tied with the other developments, like what is the war in Ukraine and the developments in North Korea, which also cause some uncertainties, particularly in the Middle Eastern region, that, for example, does US nuclear umbrella work if needed?
Dr. Bardakhi, your take on that?
Well, I think we learned lately that President Trump has sent a letter to the Supreme Leader in Iran opening the possibility for negotiations. The letter, according to the authorities in Tehran, has not yet arrived, though they are rejecting any idea now of getting back into the table. In any case, I think it's important that President Trump is always open for a deal. And the question to me is basically whether President Trump is starting from the reasons he gave back in 2018 when he left the JCPOA, the lack of effective verification, too much room for enriching, and then the sunset clause and everything, or he will start from a blank slate, from the very beginning. And the reason I'm telling that is because I think Iran is not where it was when President Trump left the JCPOA. They have advanced too much, as Olli has said already. They are in a situation where they can, if taken the decision, build half a dozen nuclear weapons easily and fast enough. And they have moved not only in enriching, but also in weaponization and in the delivery systems. So it's a different picture. So instead of focusing on the outcome of a deal, I think it will be much sensible to start with preconditions of Iran to comply in order to give Iran some possibilities of an agreement. And I think we have to deal with those three portfolios simultaneously: enriching, weaponization, and delivery system this time. And that's an open question. We don't know yet exactly what the Trump administration is thinking about it, and we have to wait and see.
General Kupilvasa, I'm going to ask a question which I know the answer to, but nonetheless it needs to be asked. When we're talking particularly about what Dr. Heinonen just mentioned with regard to the statement by Mr. Salehi and the analogy established to the near identical remarks of the foreign minister of the apartheid government of South Africa at the time, does raise alarm. To what degree are the intelligence communities, both here as well as the Five Eyes and others who are heavily invested in unveiling and monitoring the Iranian nuclear file, confident that Iran has not already reached the accumulation of nuclear weapon capabilities?
Hard to say. According to all the reports of intelligence organizations around the globe, we are in a situation where we know that they don't have a nuclear bomb yet. They have not rushed to the bomb yet. But is this the case? Not clear. There are reports indicating that they were doing all kinds of things that have to do with weaponization in various locations in Iran. We still don't know exactly what happened until 2003 in certain locations in Iran that were in part of the crash program to have a nuclear weapon at the time and were not disclosed. And I'm always suspicious that they did all kinds of things elsewhere while they were not doing them in Iran in recent years, for example, in Syria. So it might well be the case that they were making progress. We saw that there was an attempt to resume operation of some facilities in the Parchin area near Tehran that were involved in the nuclear project in the past and were reactivated. So there is reason to believe that they are trying or were trying and probably still trying to move in a way that would shorten the time necessary for them from the moment they decide to rush to a bomb until the time they have a bomb, because this threshold is the area of vulnerability for the Iranians, and they are very worried that if they are caught in between those two things, if there's enough time for the world to prepare itself to launch an attack against them at that time. It's when they are the weakest. And I think this is what the efforts are focused on, is shortening the time necessary in order to cross from reaching uranium to 90% and above and having a weapon. One of the things they can do in the meanwhile is to build some sort of an nuclear explosive device that is not necessarily going to be a weapon, but it can prove and demonstrate that they have the capability, which is going to threaten everybody and maybe try to deter them. And I think that this is where we stand. Having said that, that's also the reason why we have to act fast. We cannot wait forever. Every day that passes by is allowing them to make some progress and do all kinds of works that are going to shorten the time necessary for them to break out to a bomb. And that's why we have to act fast. And we can give some time, as you asked, Olli, we can give some time for the Trump efforts to convince the Iranians to give up through diplomatic means and economic sanctions. And Iran is in a very bad economic shape right now. But we cannot wait forever.
Dr. Heinonen, I'd like to ask you in a follow-up to what also General Kopilvassel just mentioned, as well as Dr. Baradaghi for that matter. What is the current time span of Iran from a moment of decision, based on your assessment, to the moment in which they can accumulate a first nuclear bomb or device, or even an arsenal of such devices or payloads? And is that assessment viable in the current conditions where, for instance, the IAEA still maintains open probes into undeclared nuclear materials following the unveiling of particles that were found in undeclared locations in Iran?
Yeah, that's a good question. And this is the question which the decision makers should now ask over and over again, and engage some red teams also to look the intel information which is available. Why I say it? If we take Mr. Salehi on his word, he said that a lot of this stuff is sitting on the shelf, components of nuclear weapon, so then they can assemble it in a very short period of time. IAEA safeguards has actually timeline for such a thing, and it is estimated that it is 1 month. 1 month to fabricate a nuclear weapon if you have the fissile material available, which is weapons-grade uranium in 90% enriched. So in 4 weeks' time, they can have a crude device if they have not yet assembled it ready. So this is what one has to keep in mind. And then if they, at the same time, have built, let's say, a clandestine nuclear enrichment facility, maybe with 2 cascades of advanced IR6 centrifuges, which is only maybe 1/4 of the pilot plant in Natanz per size. So if they have such kind of installation, like South Africa had way back, they can build every month 1 weapon with that team, with 4 cascades, 164 machines, IR6, and use the 60% enriched material. So this is the thing. So in a half a year, they will have half a dozen nuclear weapons. If they take at the same time the 20% enriched uranium, which is also a matter of concern, so you make another installation with the similar 4 cascades of advanced centrifuges. There you can get fissile material and assemble a weapon every 2 months. So this is what they have. And if they are able to do this in a secret place and move the material quickly there so that the IAEA doesn't know where it is. So this is the worst case scenario which we now face. And one has to think how to deal with that.
Absolutely. Well, Dr. Baradaghi, the 2 IAEA reports that were circulated by the Director General of the agency, Rafael Grossi. They indicated, and he was quite explicit about this, that Iran has accumulated fissile material enriched at levels that no other country has that is not a nuclear power already. This is a statement of intent, naturally. But beyond that, to what degree is Israel or the United States or a broader coalition at that in that context not alarmed by the fact that they need to identify potentially that starting point of a decision to the end mark or end timeline of a sequence to prepare at least one nuclear device? And why not join a coalition of the willing to confront this threat from starting altogether, since it is quite evident what the Iranians are doing?
Well, let me say a couple of things, Jonathan, to put in the perspective the concerns that we need to have vis-a-vis Iran nuclear program today. First, I think we have been believing in the past that Iran will go to build the first bomb as the Americans did in the past. But if we look carefully to the program, the US program, the Trinity test conducted in Alamogordo in 1945 was done with less than 70% enriched uranium. So we are always thinking that they need 92% enriched uranium to build a bomb. But maybe, as Cooper suggested, if they go for a test, they don't need so much enrichment. Secondly, the Chinese also did some testing on nuclear weapons with less than 80% enriched uranium. So there are different paths than the Western world used in the past to build a nuclear atomic bomb. No? So that's my first concern. The second concern is that Ukraine, the Russian invasion of Ukraine has unleashed a kind of reflection in many countries about the benefit of being a nuclear power. If Ukraine had kept the thousands of nuclear weapons from the Soviet Union era in 1994, probably they may have avoided the Russian invasion. Germany is thinking about a nuclear power. Many European countries, Japan, Taiwan, South Korea. So it will be naive to think that Iran, which is directly involved in the Ukrainian conflict, will not also be thinking the benefits of being a nuclear power. So that's why I think the clock is ticking. And as Cooper Wasser said, we don't have much time to take a decision. I think the time is approaching fast. I understand that President Trump will prefer a diplomatic solution, but maybe it's not possible anymore, no?
Well, some have already stated, people who for years have been apologists for the diplomatic course of action, have shifted their tone and are now being more vocal about the window of opportunity, as they call it, to confront Iran's nuclear threat. General Kupelwasser, from the moment of decision, I assume, of course, I'm speaking here without concrete knowledge on this, but nonetheless, I do presume that Israel and the United States, for that matter, have prepared various contingencies for a kinetic strike against Iran, which may or may not be exclusively an aerial strike. In that context, if I may ask you, what is the process of taking such a decision to strike from a timeline span, from a moment of decision going into execution, having a couple of tests in what we saw already, the B-52s in aerial strikes in the vicinity of the Mediterranean Sea, not far from Israel, in collaboration with the Americans?
Well, it's hard to say, but I do hope they do make the planning necessary, because the time may be tomorrow. I don't know. If we find out that the Iranians have started enriching uranium to 90%, then the time is immediate. And we have to take all kinds of steps in order to be fully ready, but all these exercises and joint exercises and flying long distances and flying to Iran, all of that has already been done. I believe that it's clear now that Israel has a credible military option. Whether this credible military option can deal decisive, deadly blow to the Iranian nuclear project, or whether we need some American aid is questionable, but it definitely is going to cause a lot of damage to the Iranian facilities. The Iranians, I guess, know that. That's why they are still cautious, and otherwise they would have broken to the bomb already. They are still worried about what kind of repercussion this is going to have. Especially, they know that the Americans are going to support Israel, but they may even get directly involved. And that is something that it's a different situation. We are not in the Biden years. We are in Trump years. And it's very hard to predict how he's going to behave, even for Iranians. So they have to bear in mind that he might surprise them and get directly involved in something like that. And this is why the Iranians don't do it yet. On the other hand, they lost so many assets in the last couple of months. Syria, the capability of Hezbollah to deter Israel, the ability to use their air defense in order to protect themselves. They are in a very bad shape, and the situation in Iran is very fragile, and because of the economic difficulties and the inner fighting in the Iranian higher echelons. So it's a very problematic situation for them, and they understand it, and that's why they don't rush to the bomb yet. As I said, what they're trying to do is to shorten the time necessary in order to cross the threshold. That's their main effort at this point.
Indeed. Well, naturally, it seems like everybody every state actor, if I may call it that, are showing some type of cautiousness, not hearing a lot of statements with regard to Iran's nuclear program from Saudi Arabia, for that matter, or the UAE, or let alone Bahrain. We see the public relations campaign launched by the Qataris to try and dissuade such a strike against the Iranians, voicing concerns about this. So there's a lot at play at this point in time. We're drawing near to the end of the program, and I'd like each of you to have a whole minute and 10 seconds, roughly, to provide your final statement for today's panel. Dr. Heinonen, we'll start with you.
Thank you. I think that there's a shortage of time, and I think that we have tough decisions ahead. And it's important at this point of time also make a deal very different from the JCPOA. And as Rafael said, it has to include all three elements of the nuclear device: fissile material production, manufacturing actual weapon and its properties, and the delivery vehicle, which is a missile. Those need to be tackled at this point of time, and we know Iran knows that this will be asked, and that's why they have already stated many times that they will not give up their missile program.
Absolutely. Dr. Bardaki?
Well, any potential agreement or deal with Iran has to produce a clear rollback of Iranian nuclear program in all three portfolios, enriching fissile material, weaponization of our warhead, and the delivery through ballistic missiles. If not, we're going to see a repetition of the JCPOA with all the bad consequences as in the past. At the same time, we know that the pressure for Iran to move forward through the safest way to get the nuclear arsenal is there. So if diplomatic measures failed, we need to prepare ourselves to confront Iran and dismantle by force through military kinetic action all the installations, all the enriching facilities, and all the weaponization sites in Iran at once.
Absolutely. If I may ask you just to elaborate also on the snapback mechanism. The Europeans have until October 18th before it expires of this year. To what degree do you see the Europeans coming about and taking responsibility as one should do at a position of leadership in such a crucial time?
Well, Europe is in political turmoil nowadays, very much focused on what will happen with Ukraine, the United States, and NATO. But I have to remind everyone that the Europeans have taken a tough stance against Iran in the past. So I wouldn't rule out that the maximum pressure policy of the White House will be seconded by the European countries. Whether that is enough is an open question, which I'm very doubtful. We know that sanctions have not worked in the past sufficiently enough, and I doubt that it will be enough for the future. So I'm very pessimistic in that sense. No?
General Kupelvasa, your take, and should practitioners and strategists start planning for the day after the Ayatollah regime?
Well, two things. First of all, the most important thing is to prevent Iran from having the capability to produce nuclear weapons. And the three components that were mentioned by Dr. Heinonen and by Mr. Badahi are those who are going to make it happen. Secondly, in order to be able to reach this goal through diplomatic means, the snapback is necessary in my mind. I don't know if the Europeans are going to use it or not, but if they do, it's going to improve considerably the chances of reaching it this way. And anyhow, the main tool with which, the main leverage we have vis-a-vis Iran is the fact that they realize that there is a credible military option. That is the main tool with which we can convince them maybe to adopt a more flexible policy and accept the demand to give up the capability to produce nuclear weapons. And that's why we have to sit, and the practitioners should sit and prepare and plan not only for the day of attack, but also for the day after, and have to make it clear to the Iranians that if we go this way, this is going to include the Iranian regime as well, not only the capabilities. If we have to do something kinetic, then it will be wider than just the facilities of the nuclear weapons.
The costs will be definitely very grave for the Ayatollah regime. General Kupelvasa, Dr. Badahi, and Dr. Heinonen, thank you so very much for all of your insights. I'd like to thank all of you at home as well. Until our next edition from here in Jerusalem. Shalom. For more of TV7's productions and editorials, we invite you to visit our website at www.tv7israelnews.com.